Hello and welcome to the Wicker Library. My name is Aaliyah, so happy to have you here with us today. I am going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag for 2024. I really enjoy this tag. I'll leave the original creators down in the description below, but I love watching this tag and I'm excited to actually film one of my own answers to all of these mid-year questions about favorite books, about least favorite books, disappointing books, surprising books, all of the above. So let's get right into it. However, before we get into the questions, I wanted to just go over how this year has been for me reading-wise. And it's been rather good. I've read 73 books this year, I believe. It's been pretty consistent with liking books. I think I've finally really figured out my taste in books, so I really have been picking up books that I'm confident that I will enjoy, and I have been enjoying them. Granted, there have been some disappointments. As far as genres go, I've been getting much more into fantasy than I have in a while. I've been reading a lot of graphic novels, a lot of translated fiction, like usual. However, I've been reading so much manga, so much so that I stopped counting manga volumes towards my goal of the year, just because within 2 months I've read like 60 volumes of One Piece, and so when an obsession like manga series hits me, it feels kind of wild to count it towards my reading goal, even though I am reading. So I've been reading a lot of manga, a lot of different series. However, I am in One Piece right now. That has been my everything, and I'll definitely talk about it more in the wrap-up, the tag. But yeah, so those are really just some reflections on this year. It's been a great reading year so far. I've found some new authors I really enjoy, and yeah. So let's start off with the first question, which is the best book you have read this year, and for me that is very easy, and that is Icarus by Ancrum. This was probably my most anticipated release of this year, and I was correct for it. The Wicker King by Ancrum is one of my favorite books of all time, and Icarus has joined it. I already want a tattoo of this book. The friendship that is in this story, all of the different dynamics, the romance is just so good. It is a good book to go into not knowing too much. Don't expect it to be an Icarus Greek mythology retelling. It is definitely inspired by this myth and things like that, but Icarus, the main character, really is just some guy with some pretty wild and wacky conditions of his life, and he befriends this boy kind of locked in a tower, but contemporary style. And yeah, it's just, I've never read a book where after finishing it I immediately reread it. I read this book twice this year, and it was one after another. I just finished it and I was like, no, I'm not done with this book actually, and I started it from the beginning. So yes, easily my favorite book of this year. It means so much to me, and yeah, I love it. Next question is the best sequel I've read this year, and for me, I don't read many series. I've started one or two this year. I've read, again, manga series and sequels, but those get kind of lost. So the best sequel I read was The Search by Jean Luen Yang. This is, I think, the second graphic novel or comic in the Avatar series. After Avatar The Last Airbender, the animation, there's comics, and not all of them are great. They really are hit or miss, but The Search is easily the best one, along with Imbalance, in my professional opinion. Avatar The Last Airbender was and has been an obsession of mine for years, since I first watched it as a kid. I rewatched that series so much. I've now reread the comics, and this was a reread technically, but The Search is still my favorite comic. I love Zuko, I love his story, and him figuring out what the fuck happened to his mother, actually, because we never actually get those answers in the animated series. But yeah, not all of the comics are worth reading, I will say. But if you are going to read any of them, I would suggest The Search. You don't even have to read The Promise. That one is so out of character for like half of those characters. You don't really need to read it. But anyway, I am going to be getting an Avatar The Last Airbender tattoo soon. I'm going to get the library spirit Wan Chi Tong on my arm, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, love this series, love this specific comic series, and yeah, definitely the best sequel. The next question is the biggest disappointment of 2024. And to be honest, I read a fair amount of disappointments this year, but the biggest one, because I had not only big expectations for it, but I was just really excited to read it, and I felt really let down by it, and it's Common Bonds, which is an anthology of aromantic speculative fiction. And as someone who is aromantic, I was really excited to not only feel represented, but just see characters who reflected my feelings on romance, not be in romantic relationships in the way that so much fiction is or does represent. And it was just not good. I DNF'd the anthology. It wasn't a case of one or two authors not meshing with me. All of them were severely under-edited, and I'm aware that it is a self-published anthology. It's not just that they're under-edited, it's that they really picked any story, any writer, and some aren't good, okay? So it really broke my heart, to be totally honest. It pissed me off a lot. It is one of the only anthologies I've read where I'm like, not only did this editor fail these authors, but the collection of authors isn't very good. It just, some poetry was just so bad. It was just devastating, and I couldn't continue reading it. I flipped through. I tried to find authors I've heard about before that I, might want to pick up, and it was just not good. So that was unfortunate, but easily the biggest disappointment was that book. Going on to a more positive note, however, is the next question, which is your biggest surprise of 2024. And for me, this is easily How Do You Live by Genzaburo Yoshino, which was translated, my copy anyway, by Bruno Navasky. And this book was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars. I really, really loved it. It delves into this relationship between this young boy and his uncle, I believe, or his grandfather. I forget which one, but I think it's his uncle. And it just goes over boyhood and friendship and growing up. And it's technically middle grade, but I feel like it transcends age for me. I also think it would be a bit boring as a middle grade book, but I loved it as a 20-year-old, and it made me so happy. It's not that I was surprised that I liked it. I had a feeling I would like it. It is notably the book that inspired Miyazaki to create The Boy and the Heron, which is a film I absolutely adored. And yeah, so I knew I would probably like it, but I didn't expect to love it. I didn't expect to cry over it. I just really loved that story and that book, and I think I'm going to treasure that read for a while. Next question is a new to you favorite author, and I have 3 answers for this because I've been reading a lot of new authors to me, and for me, if I'm going to call an author a favorite author, I have to have read more than one book by them, just to make things fair in my mind. So the first one I have to talk about is Rosemary Valero-O'Connell. She is the author and the artist behind this book right here, which I'm forgetting the name of. And I also read Golden Record by them, and art style, just easily the most gorgeous thing I've ever seen, I've ever had the pleasure of reading and looking at. But also her writing style is just so poetic and lush and beautiful, and I really love their artwork, their style, their writing, their everything, the vibe. just all immaculate. And also I wanted to talk about Isaki, who is the author and artist behind, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting this book, Is Love the Answer, that manga, and then also the manga of something else, which I'll also put on screen. But these two mangas are standalones and they're really beautiful. They follow asexual characters realizing they're asexual and aromantic, and it hit so hard. Okay, this is one where the representation felt very similar to my experiences, and it just was so fulfilling and healing to read, and I just really loved the story and the characters themselves outside of feeling represented and seen. That author I will be picking up from for sure. They have a few other manga series out that I really want to get to, so that is very fun. And then of course I have to talk about Eiichiro Oda, just because I have been reading so much One Piece and I love it, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit later, but that manga series has been so wonderful for me and just so much fun. I know everyone has been like talking about it and knowing about it, and a friend of mine recommended it to me, so I've been reading it and talking about it with him, and it is just so great and it makes me so happy. So yeah, those three authors I have to shout out. They're easily new favorites for me. Next question is a book that was released in 2024 that you haven't gotten to yet, but you really want to. And for me, that is Little Rot by Koike Mezi. This is going to be one of my next reads. I don't know if I'm going to pick it up today or tomorrow. I don't know when. I have the library book out, and it's a library book from New York, and I'm currently in California for a week. But yeah, I need to read this. All I need is their name on it, and it's in my hands immediately. But yes, I know very little about this book. I know it follows a friend group. I know it follows the dark underbelly of a city. It gets really twisted morally with characters, and that's all I need. That is all I need, and I'm so excited to read that. So yeah, easily my most anticipated read that's been released this year. The next question is the most anticipated releases that you want to read that come out in the second half of 2024. And for me, that is Model Home by Rivers Solomon, which I was so lucky and got an ARC of through NetGalley. We're not going to talk about the fact that I promised that I wouldn't request NetGalley ARCs until I read them all. We're not talking about that, okay? But it's Model Home by Rivers Solomon. Again, this is just a book that I just needed the author's name on it and I was sold. And I also want to get to Graveyard Shift by ML Rio. Once again, an author that I've struggled to call my favorite author because she has only had one book out, and it is one of my favorite books, which is If We Were Villains. And so the novella she has coming out, Graveyard Shift, sounds really dark and gritty and fun and a fantastic time. So I'm excited for both of those books to come out. They're both darker, they're both definitely fall, October reads for me, so I think they come out around that time, so those will be probably read when they come out. The next question we have is books you have to read by the end of the year. And I have a whole video of 24 books I want to read in 2024, or else I will unhaul them. But my priorities as far as that list goes are Breasts and Eggs, Giovanni's Room, Sula, and Parable of the Talons. These 4 books I just know I'm going to love, and I have them on my summer and fall vibe TBR, so I really think I'm going to enjoy these books, and I'm really excited to read them. The next book, or the next question I have written down is the prettiest book you've bought this year, and I don't have it with me because it's back in New York, but I bought a UK cover copy of The Adventures of Amina El-Sarafi while I was visiting the UK, and it's beautiful. It's easily the most beautiful book I've bought this year, and I'm excited to read it. It'll probably be a read for 2025, to be honest with you, but I am really excited to read it. The next question we have is the favorite character of 2024. I phrase that really weirdly, but that for me is Monkey D. Luffy. I love Luffy so much. He is me. He's more dramatic and more stupid than me, but he is me. Also, he is Aero Ace. You can't tell me otherwise. You really can't. Also, if anyone has read One Piece or watched it, I'm not finished with the series, so please don't talk about it. Okay, I don't want any spoilers, but I do love Luffy. His character just truly makes me so happy. The way he just is so loyal, and all he wants to do is eat, go on adventures, and make new friends. I love him. I love him, and I will protect him, even though he definitely doesn't need protection from anyone. The next question I have written down is a book that made you cry. And for me, this was kind of hard because a good few books made me cry this year, but one that I vividly remember and really want to talk about as a favorite book of mine is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This one I loved. It was just so beautifully written. The characters were so well-rounded, and their relationships and the familial dynamics and the magic, it was just so good and so tender, and it easily made me cry a few times. One, like properly crying, and then it made me tear up at a certain point in the book. But yeah, I really loved that book, and I wish more people were talking about it. I know it was talked about a little more when it came out, but it's just so good and deserves so much love. The next question, however, is a book that made you happy. And for me, a book that made me happy and cry, but they were more like, just like, oh my god, I love this book. Again, I'm kind of emotional, but that was What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama, and this one was translated by Alison Watts. This is a collection of vignettes, and they're all kind of interconnecting stories about these patrons of the library and how going to the library can change their life, and getting a good book recommendation can really, again, change their life for the better. And I loved it. As someone who wants to become a public librarian, it just hit the mark. It is exactly why I want to become a librarian, and I loved it, and I think a lot of book lovers would really enjoy this book. The final question, and again, these are all out of order. I answered them in a way that I wanted, but the final question is your favorite book to movie or TV show adaptation. And for me, this was One Piece. I really liked the live action, which is such a crazy sentence for a manga and anime to be adapted into live action. Well, crazy. But somehow Netflix did it with One Piece. They can't do it with any other show, but they can do it with One Piece. And I'm really excited for more seasons of the show. I think it's just casted brilliantly. I think the cast really represents the characters, and they did such a good job, and the effects were great. The changes to the story made sense. I still love the manga so much more, but it's kind of no comparison, and I think there's just so much respect behind that adaptation and what it's adapting, and it was really fun. If anything else, it was just really fun. I loved the music, the score, the acting. Again, it just made me really happy. So those were the bookish tag questions. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like it, subscribe if you're not already. We have a good time over here. And yeah, I am going to be reading all of this week, so I don't know what I'm going to be reading next. It might be Little Rot, it might be something completely different, but please do let me know what you've been enjoying, what you've been not enjoying reading this year, what some of your answers to these questions are. I love chatting with you all. I love hearing about books, recommendations, all of that. And yeah, I will see you all in the next video.